We're here at the Balboa Island Museum. It's October 3rd, 2016, with Shaunk, a past president of our organization. My first question for you is, what's your first memory of Balboa Island?
My first memory was when, probably in 1938, we visited friends that had a home on the island, and I remember riding in a kayak around the bay. Still have some pictures of that.
And what were your impressions?
Well, at that time, I was impressed with the island and enjoyed myself very much, even though I was only 6 years old.
What year did you end up moving here?
I moved down permanently in 1997. However, I started coming down in 1946. My parents and grandparents rented a house on Pearl Street, 123 Pearl. That was a duplex at that time. And my cousins from Pennsylvania came out, and we spent the whole month of July on the island. And after that, I came almost every summer. And during the time I was in high school and college, came down with friends and spent a good part of my life down here prior to moving here.
And what school did you attend? I saw some SC.
Yes,
memorabilia. Is that?
I grew up in Glendale and went to the Hoover High in Glendale, and then I went to USC, graduated USC in 1954.
And did you experience the Bow Week years?
Oh yes,
okay.
Very definitely.
Tell us about that.
One of my fraternity brothers' parents had a house on the island, and we would come down not only for Bow Week but a lot during the year. But Bow Week was very hectic. A lot of activity going on. We had a great time. I probably came down all 4 years as I was an undergraduate. The Wilma's was Jolly Rogers at the time, and that's where all the kids hung out.
And what else would be a noticeable difference about Balboa Island in the 40s and 50s?
Well, most of the houses at that time were rentals. It was before the freeways were built. And this coming from Glendale, sometimes it took 3 hours to get here. And so most of the houses were just summer places, and they were rented at other times. That's how they were able to have Bow Week. You could rent a house for a week at that time during the year.
Did you ever take the red car?
No, I never took the red car. However, my dad did to go to work from down here.
What other memories do you have of restaurants and amenities on the island in these years?
Well, Christian's Hut was probably the best place to eat down here at that time. There weren't too many restaurants then, and Christian Hut was one of our favorites. It ended up burning down, but for a short time they built another one up on Coast Highway, but that didn't last long.
And did you see any celebrities here? I know it was a gathering point for many.
Oh yeah.
Who did you see?
Several female actresses had their places over on the peninsula. There was, I don't think there were many celebrities that lived on Balboa Island. Later on, Buddy Epson, we'd see him all the time out in front of his home. But that came later on.
What was he like?
Very friendly. Liked to visit with people as they walk by and talk about his home there and all.
And what were the BIYC memories like? Do you recall seeing all the kids gathering?
I saw all the kids. I never really associated with them, but saw the boats on the beach and all during the summer. We saw John Wayne every so often, the bay, and they would point out all the homes and the celebrities, and most of them were on the peninsula. I live on Sapphire now, and we have a real nice, friendly neighborhood, and have Halloween and all as a group event. At one time, they used to close off the street once a year, but they won't let us do that anymore. So.
Do you have any other special holiday memories of the island?
Oh, lots of them. We have always had our Thanksgiving down here, and a lot of times Christmas, and we had an enjoyable time.
Do you recall seeing the early boat year parades?
Yes, and that's developed greatly since I first started. My cousin, younger cousin, ran the ferry for a number of years, even into adulthood. We enjoyed going on the ferry with him and all, going back and forth.
Your cousin's name?
Craig Standard. Seymour Beak remembers him.
Oh, great. Okay. And how is the ferry different then than it is now?
It only cost 5 cents at that time, and you could buy tickets that made it even less expensive.
And what was the peninsula like where the fun zone was?
A lot of activity in the fun zone. We spent a lot of time there. We could even get cigarettes out of the machines.
Is this during the war years?
After the war.
Okay. Were they meant for servicemen? Is that why?
No, no.
Anybody?
Just anybody.
Okay.
The thing where the arm comes down and picks things out.
Well, would you have a favorite story about any business on Marine Avenue? I know you mentioned the JR and Christian's Hunt. Is there any other particular business that you recall?
Wilma's has been one of our favorites over the years.
VI?
Yeah. We enjoyed that, and Village Inn is what I'm trying to think of.
Do you have any feelings going over the bridge when you drive over or walk over?
Oh, I feel like you're on vacation when you come over the bridge.
Would you share about how you became involved with the museum and how that organized?
Well, around 1998, 99, Pat Butterwitz, who was a neighbor, she lived 2 doors down, had the idea of buying the old fire station and making it into a museum. And so we had several meetings at her home, and finally decided to go ahead and try to do that. And I think about the 3rd meeting we elected officers. I missed that meeting and was told the next day that I'd been elected treasurer. And we did a lot of fundraising in the early days. Every Monday we hired a professional fundraiser, and every Monday we met at the Park Avenue Cafe, and talked about how we were going to go about raising the money to buy the fire station. In the meantime, we were trying to negotiate with the owner, and we used the picture of the fire station on some of our material, and he didn't like that. And so he decided he wasn't going to sell it to us, and so that sort of died on the vine, and we decided to rent the space by the ferry. And that served us well for a good many years, even though you had to negotiate the stairs to get to it.
With the original idea of the fire station, you had renderings, and how did
Yes.
the community react to starting a museum? So
Well, I
it was
think-
a proposal, brand new. So what was their thoughts?
We sent out a questionnaire to the island people, and they were all pretty much in favor of it. And we had several events. The Peppises had a party at their house early on, and we had a party at the Newport Yacht Club early on. Had a good crowd there, and they were all enthusiastic about it. Since we didn't really have a target any longer when the owner decided that we couldn't buy the place, that sort of died on the vine.
And the new location that came up, can you please explain to our listeners what that site was like and how you designed it, and
Which new?
the upstairs ferry
Oh,
office? So
uh-huh.
can you share a bit about its history and how you organized and designed the space?
Okay. Well, it was over the store, and the Maddox family ran the store for a number of years. Their son took over when the parents retired, and he owned the building by the time we rented the space. And it was in a good location, we thought, and he was very cooperative in working with us. The rent wasn't too high, so it worked well for us. And Craig Page and Walt Metatry did a lot of the display work in the space, and they did a good job of that. We had a lot of pictures and the space worked out very well for us. Being treasurer, I handled all the business of the museum for about 8 years or more. So it all worked out very well. When some of the members of the board decided that they wanted to get space on Marine Avenue, it sounded like a good idea, but I had reservations about whether we could afford it or not, and didn't feel that the space may be offered as much space as the one that we had by the ferry. So I decided that I would back out of the museum and let the others carry on. But it's worked out real well. They've done a real great job in developing the museum since that time.
And we just discovered some early photos of a volunteer party at the old site. So would you share, you were pre-interview, you were sharing some information about previous volunteers. Was there anyone you wanted to mention during your year of service there?
When Pat Butterwitz was the president for the first maybe 3 years, and she decided to move to Whittier, where her children lived. Elsa Sauter, who had been very generous during the early years, she was a vice president of the museum. She took over for a short period of time as the president. When she decided to give up the position, Craig Page became the president, and he served for president for a number of years, and I followed him as president in I think it was 2008, and served for 3 years.
So until 2011, you were
Yes,
president? Okay.
yeah, until they moved to here.
Okay. And what were some of your goals as president?
I'm sorry?
What were some of your goals as the museum president?
Well, we wanted to raise enough money so that we could get more space, further develop the museum.
Right.
And we realized being on the second floor wasn't too convenient for a lot of our audience that would want to come to the museum. During that time, I broke my ankle, so it was about 2 months before I could go up those stairs.
And what were your thoughts moving here? So right around then, you say.
Well, as I say, I had mixed feelings, mainly because of the cost. Also, I thought it was a smaller space than what we'd had before, and so I was reluctant to give up some of the things that we had at the other spot. But I was wrong.
Oh.
It turned out to be a good move.
That's a good thing. We're glad to have you here in this particular space, so it's wonderful. And you clarified that our founding year was 1999.
Yes.
So that's when we had bylaws established. At that time, Steve Bromberg was essential.
That's right.
Can you share about his role?
Well, Steve was an attorney at the time, also a member of the city council. Or I guess he hadn't gone on to the city council yet, but was about to. We talked to him about writing the bylaws and applying for the corporate status and so forth, and he helped us with that greatly.
And you eventually would also serve as the association president for 3 years. So would you share the years that you served and your role then?
From 2008, when Craig Page retired, to 2011, when you moved into here, and Sharon Lambert took over then as president.
And at that time, you were working with John Noyes as the current mayor, is that right?
Well, when we first started in 1999,
Okay.
John Noyes was the mayor of Newport Beach, and we met with him concerning the purchase of the fire station, and he thought that maybe the city would donate the money that they had received on the sale of the fire station to us if we could accomplish the purchase, but that didn't work. but John and some of the city council people were our first donors too.
We've maintained close ties with the city, so do you think it was that initial board that kind of established that?
Yes, and I solicit the city every year. We used to have to let them give them our goals and all for the year. And Ed Selleck, when he became the city council member following Steve Brownberg, has always been very supportive.
And what are your thoughts about the island celebrating its incorporation into Newport Beach this year? Would you share a bit about being an islander?
The 100th anniversary.
Right.
I think that's great.
What do you think about that legacy, because you know its history? Is there anything you'd like to comment about it?
No, not really. I wasn't here 100 years ago, so.
Anything about maybe the next 100 years? What are some of the goals you'd like the island to accomplish?
Well, I hope they maintain the same sort of atmospheres that we have now on the island. It's a wonderful place to retire.
Absolutely.
And also a great place to vacation.
Anything you'd like to see the museum do in the future?
I think expand on what you're doing now. I think the museum's doing a lot of things that are impressive.
I was wondering about the historic home tour, 2004, I believe, was when that historic program started.
Right.
Were you a part of that?
Yes, I was treasurer during that time.
Okay. And I know you did an episode with the Newport Beach TV. It was at that particular year that they covered it. Would you share a bit about that program, how it was started? And
Well, we decided that we wanted to do a home tour, including the homes that had the plaques, which we had originated. It wasn't easy to find people that wanted to volunteer their homes, so it worked out fine the first year, but then after that we had a hard time finding people that were willing to do it. So,
would you share about the plaque program and how that got started? That's very identifiable.
Yeah, the board initiated that idea, and Kirk Kozak, who was a member of the board at the time, actually handled the plaque program and did a good job. He was very conscientious about finding new plaque patrons and so forth.
And it's designed as a recognition program. Is there any other mission with collecting artifacts with the homeowners? Was there any, in the beginning, was there any interest in that?
Yes, we asked people to make donations, and we got a few that way.
New members and donations.
Yeah,
Great.
we got a lot of pictures. I donated a bunch of postcards and pictures and that sort of thing originally.
And how were those pictures maintained in the early years? Now we have a past perfect system, so I was wondering about how records were maintained.
We had big movable plaques in the at the museum, and that's one of the things we left behind. And they were posted on that, and we would change it from time to time. But you could go back there, and there's about maybe 10 of them that you could go through to look at the pictures.
Did you get a lot of photos early years with people coming in?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And their stories as well? Maybe
Yes, they usually had stories that they would tell us.
Did you write them down, or you just listened? What was kind of your approach?
We wrote down as much as we could, and it should be in the files still, I would think.
Certain. Were there any other events? I know you had a volunteer annual party, it looks like, and home tour. Were there any other programs that you set out to establish?
No, we had several parties in the museum itself.
Any themes, or just social gatherings?
It's social gatherings. Some of them were for a purpose, recognizing people going off the board or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Within the history of Balboa Island, is there something that's your favorite about its overall history?
Oh, I think the whole story about the columns and how the island started.
Would you like to share a bit of how it got started for our listeners? Some may not know.
Well, Collins was in the real estate business, and he decided to sell lots on the island, and he would sell them at $200 to $300. But at that time there was no seawall, so when the tide came in, the island would be flooded, and the people that bought the lots thought they'd been gypped. So the island really developed when the seawall was built, and I think that was about 1919, around that time. There's a house on the island, a man by the name of Kendall, who was a penny store manager. And in those days, the managers sometimes became very wealthy because Penny would take half of the profit of their store, and the manager would take the other half of the profit. And Kendall was one of those people. And my cousin also, that I mentioned also ran the excursion boat around the island, and I told him one time about Kendall. And so he started telling everybody that was that J.C. Penney owned that house. Years later, I've heard people saying that was Penny's house. I doubt if Penny was ever anywhere near the island.
I've heard that story,
Yeah.
So it's still lingering.
Yeah.
Never proved.
And
So
I
thanks for
started
clarifying.
that.
Did you? I'm glad we
But-
sourced the person who started this.
Yeah.
It helps. Now we can validate that.
I called him
Fun
on.
folk.
I called him on, and he said, "Well, nobody knows the difference."
Any other fun story that was created? I know we've often heard the folklore at the moment that Cagney played a game of poker with Collins, and that's how he lost the home. Did you ever?
I've heard that story, but I don't think that I'm not sure that that's correct.
I wonder too. It's a great story, but.
During the time Cagney owned Collins Isle, everybody referred to it as Cagney Isle. And during the war, I guess it was the Coast Guard that took over the island, and it was shambles after they left. And so I don't think Cagney ever came back after that. And it was finally developed into 6 houses that are on that island now. They tore down the castle, which was impressive to look at.
Sure. You were here during the war. It was your first visits in
Well, 46 was the year after the war ended.
Okay.
I think I was probably here prior to the war, around 38.
38.
And
Do you
then-
recall the war years here? The blackouts?
Oh yeah, actually we vacationed at Lake Arrowhead during that time. Our next door neighbor had a house at Lake Arrowhead, and I was at Lake Arrowhead when the war ended, so I can remember all that. But we started coming to Balboa really in 46, which was the year afterwards.
After. Okay. Did you know any servicemen who lived here?
No,
No.
I'm not sure that many did.
Okay. Is there anything in particular you want to add to the record? That kind of concludes our preset questions and interests, but
Yeah.
we want to make sure there's plenty of time for you to share other memories of the island and your leadership.
I think that the thing that I would emphasize is the part that Pat Butterwitz played in starting the museum and developing the museum. And she was very determined that we were going to get the fire station. And I think that probably would have been a good location if it had worked out. And I felt sorry that Pat had health problems later on, wasn't able to carry on.
Fortunately, we've heard since then from the kids who are very glad that she started that. I was just sharing with you, of course, that letter
Yes.
in gratitude. So that's the reason why we're here interviewing you, is that you were part of that legacy of
Yeah.
building a museum that doesn't come from just random
Right.
efforts. It takes time to plan
Yeah.
and structure, and so. Is there anybody else on that early board that we haven't mentioned that's worth mentioning?
Well, I mentioned Elsa Sauter, who followed Pat, and she was a very generous donor to the museum, and probably because of her donations, we were able to continue. in those days we didn't have email addresses for people, and we weren't able to really send out a message and ask for donations to people that we knew. For a short period of time, Louise Costa, we hired her to help with the fundraising. She came to all the meetings that we had every Monday at Park Avenue. And so we paid her as an employee to help us with that. But she donated all of the money that we paid her back to the museum. And she was very helpful in the early days. Jack Brown was the professional fundraiser that we hired. He lived on the island, and he was very helpful in those days too.
That's great. What do you think about Park Avenue Cafe not being there? Of course, there's new development coming to the island, so what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that they're going to reopen. I think they've had a lot of problems with getting permits and so forth. It's taking the time.
Any thoughts about the new businesses coming in?
There seems to be a lot of turnover on the main street here on Marine.
Any thoughts about residents, about then and now?
A lot of the residents are heirs of people that have been here before.
We're on our third and maybe fourth generation, I suspect. So.
Actually, my parents bought my house in 1965. It was built in 64, and they bought it in 65. And they never lived out here. They lived in Glendale, but the whole family would come down on weekends and whenever we could.
And your neighbors, are many of them original owners?
No, not original owners.
Mm-hmm.
Our house, when we bought it, had two little houses on either side, and they were torn down a few years later, and big houses were built. So.
Yeah, that's...
the house on the corner, we're next to the corner, built in order to sell. It wasn't built by an owner. It was sold as soon as it was built. The one on the other side was built by people that planned to live there, or at least use it for vacation.
And what do you think about just Newport Beach in general? It's grown significantly over the years.
It has. It's a lot of changes, but it's still a great place to live.
Any thoughts about the peninsula and all the changes there in the village?
No, doesn't seem to me that the village is really developing much, but hopefully it will.
Any other noticeable changes or thoughts about the area and just how it shaped you as a resident all these years?
No, I think the planning is done well. I think everything's going well.
There's very strong leadership right now, I think, as always, with planning and developing the area.
Right.
So it's quite remarkable to
Yes.
see early images of without Jamboree Road, and now we have a whole epicenter with Fashion Island sitting on top of it.
Yeah.
It's becoming quite a gathering place, so it's neat to look at the early history.
You mentioned Jamboree. Of course, the story on how that came about is interesting too. Where the Boy Scout Jamboree was held on Irvine property, and the road was just a dirt road to bring in supplies and all for the Jamboree, and eventually became Jamboree Road.
It's amazing. We've been meeting Boy Scouts who were at that gathering,
Oh,
and they recall they've actually donated posters and pictures of that event. And they work and live in the area now, so they came to that event since it was national from other places, and they landed here and stayed here. So it's truly a gathering.
Right.
So yeah, big party.
Yeah.
For sure. Anything else you'd like to share with us? I think you covered the spectrum very well. If there's anything.
I don't think of anything offhand.
Okay, well, you know where to find us if you have anything else to comment. So that concludes our interview.
Okay, well, thank you.
Appreciate it.